Well, welcome everyone. My name is Karen Ronning Hall, and I am your neighborhood preparedness evangelist. And the mission of Cedar Hills Ready is to create caring, connected, and resilient neighborhoods. We are committed to making sure that every neighbor is prepared and has the best chance of survival in the event of a disaster. So welcome, and I'm glad you're here. We've invited people from not only my neighborhood in Cedar Hills, but also across Portland, because this information is relevant to everyone. We're making our content freely available to everyone, so feel free to share this information with anyone. And if you happen to live outside of the Cedar Hills area, and you want to start your neighborhood on a Neighborhood Ready program, please contact us and we will be happy to provide you with information and also contacts to anybody we know in your neighborhood who might be doing something similar. It's really been a doozy of a year, hasn't it? 2020. It's good to be back. We were shut down by COVID-19 back in March, like everyone else, and we were actually worried that we were not going to be able to do this meeting this week because of the wildfires. Instead of quaking it up in April, we were stockpiling toilet paper and, boosting our internet speeds and renewing our subscriptions to Netflix and so on. And I never thought that the comment, I wouldn't touch them with a 6-foot pole, would actually become a national policy. But here we are. It's clear that getting you this information and getting prepared is incredibly important right now. And I hope that this meeting and what you learn from it will spur you to take actions that could save your life or the lives of your family members or other people that you love. So as I mentioned earlier, we are recording this meeting so that other people can view this in the, who couldn't make it to the meeting. And because of that, we'd like people during the meeting to remain on mute until we get to the question and answer session at the end of the meeting. If you have a question during the meeting, please don't hesitate to use the chat function, and that's at the bottom of the screen. There's a little comment bubble. You can click on that and it'll bring up a box and you can type in a question. And one of my co-hosts, Stan, is monitoring that, and we will make sure those questions are answered. And also the questions that you submitted when you registered, he has a copy of those as well. So we'll hopefully at the end we'll get all the questions answered. And the other thing I wanted to mention, if you haven't used Zoom before, there is a view. You can change the view, whether it's a gallery view or a speaker view. You can change that, and that's available in the upper right corner. At least it is on my screen. You can just change that. The best view to be watching this is in speaker view. All right, so I'm going to share my screen and get the presentation started. First. And hopefully this will work. I have learned all kinds of little tricks on this machine, on the Zoom. All right. So before we get started, I wanted to say thank you to a number of folks who are part of the Cedar Hills Ready Quake Up team who worked diligently over the summer. Every Friday we met and had action items to create this program. And I'm starting with my husband, Bill, who's a fellow preparedness evangelist. And Lincoln Thomas is a neighbor of mine. He is the Neighborhood Ready coordinator for Cedar Hills, and he also led our vendor management program for Quake Up. And he'll be speaking later on in this program. Judy Janowitz is my mentor. She is has been a member of the Beaverton CERT, which is the Community Emergency Response Team. Sorry, and she's been there for a really long time and ran Beaverton's Map Your Neighborhood program. That's where I met her. Kate Arnold is a city councilwoman for Beaverton, and she'll be speaking later on in this program as well. And Barbara Bracken, oops, I skipped over Stan. How could I skip Stan? Stan Hausman, the master of disaster, he co-founded an organization called Quake Up, and we're partners with them. And Barbara Bracken is Tualatin Ready program manager and a member of the Tualatin CERT program. And we've modeled this program tonight after her program, as well as the Get Prepared Now booklet that is available free from us at any time from us. Okay.
I'm here too.
Oh, hi, Michelle.
I don't see my face up there, but I'm not used to Zoom meetings, so I don't know how this works.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you, Michelle.
I don't need to have my face up there. I wasn't requesting my face to be up there.
Okay.
Okay, I'll mute myself back.
Thank you. All right. So moving on, looks like we have another person. This is our agenda for today. We're going to start off with looking at 2020 and, turning 2020 hindsight into foresight. And then we're going to have our fantastic first responder agencies tell us like it is, what they will be doing in the event of a major disaster and what we can expect from them and when. You'll begin to understand why our theme tonight is, it is up to us. Finally, we're going to look at next steps for Neighborhood Ready, what you can do also individually and as a neighborhood. And at the end, we'll answer your questions. The phrase 2020 hindsight means looking back at a situation or an event and having a clearer understanding of how we could have handled things differently. And as you can see from this slide, some of us approach these challenges in different ways. This is actually a party over here with my friends. What we hope to accomplish in this meeting is to turn 2020 hindsight into foresight. Take a look at what's happening right now, what we know, and then create a model for the future and prepare for it. And by doing so, you have the opportunity to take actions now that could save your life, the lives of your family, and your neighbors. What we know is that natural disasters are increasing in frequency and intensity. 2020 has served as a call to action to get prepared. We've experienced pandemics, historic wildfires, and historic storms, and these have cost lives, livelihoods, and destroyed homes. We know that we're overdue for a massive earthquake called the Cascadia earthquake. So how do we increase our chances of survival in these situations? Well, it's more than just buying booze or chocolate or having an online party. That's not going to do it if we're going to survive the big one. What we are going to do today is that we're asking our primary response agencies to talk to us briefly about what their response will be when a disaster strikes. And then you'll get from this conversation that there are things that you can do on your own and with your neighbors to better survive a disaster, and that it's up to us to be prepared. So I'd like to start with our 911 speaker, because when emergency happens, for many of us, our first instinct is to pick up the phone and call 911, right? And that normally works under normal circumstances. But during a major disaster, this probably won't work. And I'd like to introduce you to Monique Roberts, Operations Supervisor for Washington County 911. and she will tell us about 911's challenges, capabilities, and protocols during a major disaster. Monique?
Okay, thank you. Well, as we all learned, especially with these fires, it can happen whenever you least expect it. We're all planning for the big earthquake and everything, but I think what we can agree on is it doesn't take something of that magnitude to shut things down and cause delay. We've seen it with ice storms, and the big thing for us is at the 911 center, the calls don't stop. The call increases, the call loads will increase for the specific emergency, but we still service normal calls. We still have regular medical calls that we're handling for the population during those events that are not related to the events. We still have crimes that occur and things like that. Plus, at the dispatch center, not only do we answer incoming calls, we assist the user agencies, and that's all the police departments, the fire departments, and all of that, and our partner dispatch centers. We all kind of do this all together. Our protocol doesn't really change in these events. It just gets a little more organized in a way. You can call, but the things to expect, which some of you may have experienced, is longer than normal answer times. We only have so many people, we only have so many phone lines. So when your power goes out, when something like that happens as a result of one of these emergencies, what's helpful is to know your resources, know how to get a hold of the power company, know how to find out this information in a way other than calling 911. Our non-emergency lines still function, but again, we only have so many people, and we don't refuse help. We don't ever get the help to you, but when things like this happen, the big thing to remember is it's going to be a very much delayed response. From the time it takes us to answer, from resource availability out on the road, during the ice storms, if you get in a minor crash and everyone is fine, you're not hurt, but you need a tow truck, it could take several hours, where normally maybe 20 minutes. Just things like that to think about. We don't prioritize based on location or weather. It's all about the problem at hand. So if you fall down during a power outage trying to find your emergency supplies that you didn't quite have organized and you twist your ankle and you need assistance, yes, we'll send someone to you. It's going to take a while, and we have to help the person who's having a heart attack, who may be looking for their emergency equipment, cut off a hand, things like that. That's how we prioritize things that are happening right now and severity level. Really, I could go on about how we service calls and how that works for a couple hours, so 5 minutes is a little rough, I apologize. But my biggest thing for you is to sign up for public alerts. That's publicalerts.org, and we send out messages at the request of those user agencies, the fire departments, police departments, and we share information based on your address. It's not like the Amber Alerts that's a large area. It's if it affects your address, but you can sign up if you have family that lives within the county, if you have parents or children that live away from you, or you work outside of the home and your children are home, you will know what's going on at your house. If you have to evacuate, if you need to stay inside, shelter in place for any reason, that is probably the best way to get that notification. Because like I said, it's going to be hard to get through because everyone calls. When it starts to snow, everyone calls. They want to share with us that it's snowing outside. We can't see outside of the dispatch center, so as nice as that is, it does take up resources to someone who might actually be needing help. So the biggest thing I can tell you, don't wait for the earthquake. Don't think, it's fine, they'll find me, they'll help me. Be able to help yourself out first, and then call when you really need it so we can get someone to you. And I know the Map Your Neighborhood program really well. If you do participate in that, that's something to remember, because when you call 911 to tell us that your neighbor's house is on fire, yes, the fire department wants to know what's burning and if anything else is in danger of burning, We want to know who lives there. Do you know how many people live in that house? Do you know, are they home? Do they have someone who's disabled in a bed upstairs? We at the dispatch center are nosy and we want all the details. And yes, losing your house is a disaster, but we're always going to push back on the people. We're on the life safety first. So just get to know who lives next door. Do they know who's in your house? Sort of that situation. And I can't keep track of time. It's my 5 minutes up. Like I said, I could do this forever.
Bill?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just asking, Bill, you're the timer. How's she doing?
Oh.
We can't hear you, Bill.
Yeah, she was not near her phone, I guess. So next time I'll do this.
I saw it ring. I wasn't sure if it was you. So
It was me.
thank you.
That was really good. Thank you.
Thank you, Monique. That was awesome. So let me share my screen. In a major disaster, as we've seen this month with the wildfires, our fire and rescue teams make heroic efforts to save lives and property. What can we expect from them during a disaster, a major disaster? What are their limits and challenges? I'd like to introduce Kim Hahn, Public Affairs Officer, Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, who will tell us about the fire department's challenges, capabilities, and protocols during a major disaster. Kim?
Thank you, Karen, and hi, everyone. First off, thanks for the invitation to join this meeting to discuss TVFNR's role in a disaster, such as an imminent Cascadia subduction zone earthquake or any other kind of disaster, wildfires, whatever you name it, kind of like Monique talked about. We tend to go into some of these disaster ops modes for ice storms and things like that don't always impact everyone, but I couldn't agree more with what Monique talked about, and it's just that reiteration of having that the personal preparedness for you because of the fact that, like our dispatchers, you know, we have limited number of crews that can go out in apparatus, and in an earthquake, you know, we're also going to be challenged by our transportation infrastructure and you know, structures or things that have blocked roadways and things like that. So our response is definitely going to be delayed. And so, of course, we are very strong supporters of community preparedness because if all of us are prepared, it will allow everyone to better navigate the challenges of what we could potentially face in one of the what could potentially be a most devastating natural disaster in our area that we will have experienced if it comes to the big one. And even knowing that probability, and not everyone is aware of this, of an earthquake or other potential disasters, TVFNR, along with a lot of our partner agencies, several of whom are on this call presenting today, regularly do training simulation drills, and the focus is usually on these bigger significant disasters like the big one, because this regular training not only ensures that we stay proficient with our own emergency procedures and up to date with them internally, but it also helps with the coordination and communication needs with our external partners from the big overarching view because of how all these agencies are coming together that serve you. So right now I'm just going to touch on a few high-level overview actions and our role with TVFNR as a disaster hits, but just understand that there's a lot of behind-the-scenes planning, training, and procedures that go well beyond the brief highlights. But obviously I've got a 5-minute window, and I'd probably bore you all to death, and you'd probably fall asleep on this call if I went on with all of it. But so when a disaster like an earthquake happens, or even like this wildfire that happened recently in the weather event, our agency is all hands on deck. So we immediately transition to the highest level emergency mode. We activate our fire operations center in Tigard at our command center, which happens to be actually where I'm at right now. It's kind of been my second home for the last 3 weeks. And then we'll also, you know, Monique was talking about how they're just going to get inundated with 911 calls. And so one of the things we did with the wildfire, and that we would do with other disasters, is we actually send over a fire department liaison to staff over at WACA. We call it WACA, the Washington County Consolidated Communications Agency. It's a mouthful, but because we are there to try and assist in helping prioritize some of these calls. And so it just gives that extra level of or layer of triaging assistance, because we're also going to upstaff our frontline responders to the maximum that we can, keeping in mind a big event is going to happen and response is going to continually happen. So we need to sustain that with our staffing, and we're still going to have to work in shifts. We can't put people on, for 5 or 6 days straight. I mean, they do have to go home. They've got to also take care of their families and things like that. So we will upstaff as much as we can. We even include some of our non-frontline positions, such as our deputy fire marshals. And a good example of that was for some of our lower priority calls, which Monique talked about too, where it's going to be hard to get to some, when you've got a sprained ankle versus a cardiac arrest, we really do need to prioritize that cardiac arrest. Or, with the weather event and the Chehalem Peak fire, we had a lot of people calling in wires down and things like that, that actually could potentially, obviously start another fire, but there was no imminent life danger to an individual. So we sent out deputy fire marshals to check on them, see if they can help close the road, get other resources there that are needed outside of TVFNR, and they relay that back to our 911 dispatchers and let them know so they can also get the right resources out there, and that doesn't tie up first responders that are trying to respond to medical and fire calls. So then at that point, our staff and crews will immediately begin response efforts. There's definitely no delay. I mean, we will know if the earth is shaking. And but one of the bigger things, and it's a good reminder of everyone on this call too, is we have to make sure that we're safe and not injured too. This is going to impact everyone. First responders don't have a bubble or bubble wrap around us. I wish we did, but we don't. And so we have to make sure we're safe, but we also have to make sure that our loved ones are safe. Because if my partner is trapped in our home and possibly even injured, I'm going to have a hard time focusing. I'm not going to give it my all. And hopefully most of our folks are going to be okay, and they'll be able to help their families out and make sure they're safe. And so that ensures that we can perform at the high level that's expected of our job and that's expected of our communities. So let's say there's, folks that aren't able to report to duty right away. We always have folks on standby, so they'll be swapped out with someone else. But again, it's going to be very taxing, in terms of trying to get through the cycle. So just kind of like what we experienced in the wildfires, same thing. We were having people that were actually getting level 3 evacuations and having to go home. And so we had to replace them with other folks. So the crews will be at their stations. As soon as they can get out on the road, they're going to get out on the road. I have a feeling my 5 minutes is up. I might have gotten a phone call. Is that you, Bill, calling me? I don't know if that's Bill calling me.
Yes.
I'll try to wrap this up. Sorry about that. So one of the things that we will be doing is we will be going out and surveying. We've actually identified facilities. We're not going to wait for that first 911 call, even though we know we're going to be dispatched constantly. We'll be surveying identified facilities that have a lot of people that congregate at them, adult foster care homes, hospitals, making sure they're still standing, haven't collapsed, and see if they have patients, and a lot of it's going to depend on when the incident occurs as to whether there's even people in some of these buildings, like your schools and your malls and things like that. So we'll be doing the, typical emergency care, medical care, extinguishing fires, doing technical rescues, the whole bit, out there with our other frontline responders, and including our law enforcement partners, ambulance service providers, everyone. But our ultimate goal, saving lives. And we're going to do the best that we can, but it's going to be a lot easier if everyone else is prepared in and of themselves, especially if they don't necessarily need 911 response. So that is pretty much my very quick high-level snapshot. It's like drinking from a fire hose, as we say. And so again, that's kind of our role in a disaster. Thanks so much for allowing me to join. And of course, I'll be on this call to the end, and I'm happy to answer questions. And thanks for letting me go over. Sorry about that.
All right,
Thank you so much, Kim. All right. Our next speaker is from Washington County Sheriff's Office. In normal circumstances, the Sheriff's Office does a wonderful job of helping to maintain community safety. What can we expect from them during a major disaster? What are their limits and challenges? I would like to introduce Sergeant Mark Trost, Washington County Sheriff's Office Emergency Operations Center, who can help us with these questions. Mark?
Thank you, Karen. I really appreciate being able to speak here tonight. Again, Mark Trost with Washington County Sheriff's Office. I've been here almost 20 years, and part of my collateral duties is with the Washington County Emergency Operations Center, or as we call it, the EOC. And I'd like to reflect on what Kim and Monique said. The most important thing is to make sure that you as a citizen has something, what we call in our group, a go bag, a bug out bag. Anything that you have that can prepare yourself to be able to be self-sufficient for yourself and your family or your close loved ones for about 24 to 48 hours. With that being said, the second thing is that, again, reflecting on what Kim mentioned prior, is that Pat Garrett, our sheriff, said and believes that the most important thing for us is to make sure that as law enforcement officials, we need to make sure we're safe first, then we can take care of others. It's kind of like the analogy of when you're on an airplane, they give you the spiel about the water landing in the air, put your mask on first so you can take care of somebody else. So that's kind of what we're kind of believing in and living at as our office. After that, if you have a disaster or something like this, we're going to enact, or we're going to go ahead and activate what we call the EOC. And what that does is, in general, it's the Operations Center. It coordinates all of the efforts to mitigate or make the disaster that's happening end as fast as possible. An example would be, we activated it twice this year, one for COVID-19 and the second time for the wildland firefighters. So with the Chehalis Fire and the Hag Lake Fire. So what that means is, as our sheriff's office is doing efforts to mitigate the fire or mitigate the COVID, we're basically putting all of our resources to that. And so the best thing that I can say is, again, if you guys, men and women of the community, can be self-sufficient for at least 24 to 48 hours, it's going to give us some space to breathe, figure out what's going on, what we need to do to fix the problem. So if it's the big quake, we're going to have to be able to assess what kind of infrastructure has been damaged, your electrical, your power, your road system, and stuff like that. One of the fortunate things, and a great example is right here, right now, is if the big one happens, we're not going to be able to go to the Emergency Operations Center, but we have the ability to be virtual, so we can still be effective at a certain capacity. So that's basically what it is. Breaking down the EOC into parts, it's basically in the 4 basic divisions. There's your incident command, there's your planning division, there's your operations, and your logistics. And depending on what type of disaster it is, the logistics section is going to change. So, for example, the COVID environment is going to be Health and Human Services is going to be driven in the logistics section on that. If it's going to be the fire, it's going to be Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, or any other fire agency or medical that's going to be responding to that. So it's a very kind of analogous, kind of a amalgam of group of people that have trained in a type of system that we call ICS. But it's basically a general overview on how to coordinate efforts to make it a little bit easier to operate the way we do, so we can mitigate the situation. In a nutshell, that's how we work.
That's great. Thank you. Actually, I am a member of CERT as well, Community Emergency Response Team. If anybody is interested in learning about that ICS system, join CERT. It's cool. You learn all about it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's basically what it is and what we're going to be doing. So we're going to be focusing a lot of efforts on the situation. And we're going to be setting up these like call centers to reduce the amount of calls from Waka and Monique and all that stuff. So they're not inundated by all these 911 calls that could be diverted to us. For example, the COVID stuff, like what do I do about being exposed? Where do I go to get tested? Or the fires, hey, you know what? I can't reach this person because they've been evacuated or whatnot. So we have a call number or a call center. stuff like that. That's our primary focus, or primary deal.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. And are you going to be around for answering questions at the end?
I will, definitely.
Awesome. That's
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you. Washington County Emergency Management Office works to minimize the effects of major disasters on the community through assessing community hazards and risks, and promoting preparedness activities like this, and maintaining Emergency Operations Center to coordinate response efforts. What can we expect from them during a major disaster? What are their limits and challenges? And I'd like to introduce Alita Ostakovich, Emergency Management Coordinator for Washington County, who will speak about how Washington County Emergency Management Office will respond in a major disaster.
Thanks, Karen. Good evening, everyone. It's so great to see everyone joining Quake Up. Thinking about and preparing for the earthquake now is extremely important. So this year we've experienced two unprecedented crises, right? We have COVID and the wildfires. And I've joked with my fiance that these are training crises for us to prepare for the earthquake. But I think there's some truth in that. So first we practiced staying in our homes with our families for months, which was a challenge, right? You know, we practiced food shortages and resource shortages. When we experienced the fires, we practiced living without power for a day. We practiced figuring out how to entertain ourselves without the modern comforts of the internet. We practiced not being able to go outside because of the hazardous conditions. And then I practiced finding a new route to work because my normal road was closed because of the Tualatin fire. We are more prepared for what is to come thanks to these two events, but these crises have also highlighted for us areas that we still need to work on or things that we didn't realize would occur. I think the biggest thing that occurred to us was that everyone was busy. When our power went out, we realized that the utility company was so overwhelmed with other issues that we wouldn't get our power back for days or hours. It would be a while. And we've heard from the other presenters that the first responders were really busy and overwhelmed with all the calls and responses they had to go on. We're going to experience that in the earthquake as well, but to a much higher degree. So during an emergency, Washington County Emergency Management stands up the Emergency Operations Center, or EOC. And Mark gave a really great overview of what an EOC does, so I'm just going to add to that a little bit. The EOC is responsible for coordinating situational awareness, connecting with our responding organizations like TBFNR, the City Emergency Management Programs, WACA, and law enforcement. And then we set up operational and strategic priorities. Now that's pretty emergency managey speak. So what it really means is that in the field, the first responders are going to be focused on fire suppression, search and rescue, and responding to medical emergencies. And then county staff in the EOC are going to be focused on ensuring our hospital systems are operational, getting a clear picture of what's going on and what the needs are, conducting a damage assessment, identifying usable roadways. And on top of all of that, we're getting information about what's happening in the field, feeding back into our EOC so we can make plans and we can make people aware of what's going on out there and what resources are needed. There are going to be so many needs in the community in those first 72 hours. It's going to be a scramble. You know, trying to figure out everything that's going on and all the needs. It'll take us a little while to get that clear picture of what's going on, and then we can start working on plans. So one of the things I do in my job is work with Health and Human Services to make plans and coordinate for emergencies. And then when emergency happens, I focus on the mass care aspect. So I'm going to take you through a sheltering scenario, sort of when we have to open a congregate location for everyone to sleep in a gym and have food and get information there, because we'll definitely see that in an emergency when people don't have safe homes to be in. So when we're planning for a shelter or providing food to families, it's going to take time to implement. So the first thing we have to do is identify a safe structure. So we have a list of places that could be usable, but we don't know if the roads are safe to get there. We don't know if it has power. We don't know if it's been damaged. So we'll have to send somebody out and make sure that it's safe for people to actually live in and stay in for a long period of time. we'll have to figure out how to power it, and then we'll have to get supplies and staff there. So we can expect a really large portion of the population needing sheltering. So we'll need beds, cots, food, coloring books, we'll need blankets, we'll need laundry services, like all of these things that we normally have. We're going to have to get supplies for that, and staff and volunteers who are willing to help manage different aspects of the shelter. And on top of this, we're not going to be having communication ourselves, right? Not at least what we're used to. It'll be slower, it'll be a more jerry-rigged or kind of older technology, so definitely slower than what we're used to. If you think about that, so we've got 72 hours trying to figure out what's going on and making plans, and then call it maybe another 48 hours while we get that shelter up and running. So that right there is 5 days without support structure in place. And that's not because we are not trying, it's just because there's so much and it's so overwhelming. So while we're scrambling, you and your neighbors will have to look out for each other. You'll have to be that support system and be those first responders while we're busy. I implore you to get started now. Meet your neighbors, learn about their lives, take an inventory of your supplies and the tools that could be helpful. Maybe take a first aid class. Anything that you do now will make those first couple of days easier, and that'll really be worth it. And I know it's hard to process and kind of actually accept that you'll be completely on your own, because we're so used to having support systems in place. It's kind of unfathomable if there's ever going to be a time where that doesn't exist. But that's why getting to know your neighbors is so important. So you're building your own support system so you won't be alone. You'll be part of a team, and you'll be able to cope and survive and recover all that much easier because you're surrounded by others. Thanks.
Oh, wow. Thank you. That was awesome. All right. Thank you. So our next speaker is Beaverton has an emergency management office responsible for developing and maintaining the city's response, recovery, preparedness, and education of city employees and the public. What can we expect from them during a major disaster? What are their limits and challenges? What's the city's strategy for helping citizens? I'd like to introduce Kate Arnold, Beaverton City Councilwoman representing Beaverton's emergency response during a disaster. Kate? Kate, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there you go.
What is the city of Beaverton going to be able to do for you when that earthquake hits? Well, we have 3 groups of people. Our police officers, depending on the time of day, you'll have 6 to 12 police officers out there. That's for about 100,000 people. We also, if it happens during normal business hours, we'll have groups of public work crews that do things like road construction, landscaping, putting in pipes, but they won't know what to fix at first, and they may not have the equipment or access to most critical areas. After the earthquake occurs, our police officers will try to establish communications with dispatch, and public works and other staff will try to connect with their departments and our city emergency operations center. To run our emergency operations center, we have 35 employees who are trained to be part of the city's incident management team. They are trained to lead emergency response efforts, and they will try to make their way to our new public safety center on the corner of Allen and Hall. But in this emergency, they could be off duty or at home, be in areas that are unpassable because of the damage to roads. That's why in our city, we've spent a lot of time and energy in disaster planning to train community members. Our Community Emergency Response Team program, or CERT, has 400 active members and almost 300 other reserve members who've done some training before. But their plan is to deal first with their families and immediate neighbors, and hopefully over a period of days or weeks, they may be able to gather as teams to start working through neighborhoods with whatever resources they have. We'll also be trying to link up with amateur radio operators that have ham radios. A lot of our communications may be down, so your cell phone is not going to work. The city has also sponsored and supported with FEMA the Map Your Neighborhood program, which you're going to be learning more about in this meeting. And we really believe in this program. We, as your city government, operate with people just like you. We don't have a vast network of supplies and resources to immediately start rescuing people in the dire conditions that we're going to find ourselves in. We'll do our best, as well other agencies that we're working with that you've heard from today, but it's not going to be nearly enough. So it boils down to two ideas that I hope you take away from this. One, we are all in this together. Your emergency responders may not even be able to show up on your street for weeks or months. So it's up to us as individuals and our neighbors to take care of our families and our neighborhoods in the weeks and possibly months until government and utility companies can restore the services that we are used to having in the city. So it's vital for volunteer groups like this to help our citizens prepare themselves so that we can all survive and recover when disasters hit. Thank you so much for joining. I hope this will touch your heart and encourage you to be involved in your neighbors so that you are able to do things to help them rather than to be a victim and be stressed out. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks,
Thank
Kate.
you very much. And thank you to all of our speakers, our first responders, and government agencies. As you can see, these agencies are doing a great job keeping our systems going day to day and in local emergencies. But when the big one comes, when a major disaster happens, we're learning that it's really up to us to be prepared. And we need to work together as neighbors to fill in the gap from when our responders can get there. So I wanted to show you a slide here. Hold on, let me share the screen because this is remarkable, actually. Share. And so these are estimates for how long it's going to take to recover. You know, how much can our first responders do? Well, this is how long it's going to take us to recover. These are estimates done in 2015. They're going to be updating these. The governor of Oregon said that they will be updating these in 2021. But here's the data. The real picture is that emergency responders will be overwhelmed at the beginning of a big disaster like a Cascadia quake, and that your electricity may be out for months, your drinking water out for months as well. Our sanitary systems could be down for months. Transportation and vital supplies like food and medicine may be interrupted for a really long time. It's going to take our official responders a long time to get to us and for normal supply systems to be repaired. So the big message is it's up to us and we should be prepared. Maybe several, I mean, we're definitely prepared for at least a minimum of 2 to 3 weeks. So it's up to us. And we promised that we would have information for you. The two levels of preparedness is individual preparedness and neighborhood ready. And both are equally important and you can do them concurrently. So with individual preparedness is, you know, it's like getting your go bag ready, home preparation, family plans, fire extinguishers, you know, emergency supplies, all that kind of stuff. And what we've put together over the summer based on the Tualatin Ready materials is a Get Prepared Now booklet that has all kinds of information. And that's something that we would actually go through during a neighborhood preparedness meeting. You can get this from the website, cedarhillsready.org or quakeupnorthwest.org. We're just putting that stuff up there. So that's available to you. And there's a lot of material, especially on Quake Up, on all kinds of stuff, videos and all kinds of really valuable information. But you don't have to do it on your own. We also provide Neighborhood Ready. We're calling it Neighborhood Ready. It is basically Map Your Neighborhood program. And what that is planning with your neighbors, getting prepared, knowing what to do immediately after, and checking up on each other, making sure you have each other's backs. And I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. I was watching on TV during the last 2 weeks ago, as the fires were, raging through through our state, and somebody came on the television and said, "My neighbor called me at 1:30 a.m. in the morning and told me to go now." And they had barely enough time to get out into their car, the whole family, and go before that fire just burned their house right down. And so had they not known their neighbor, they probably would not have been alive. So it's just incredibly important to do a Neighborhood Ready program and get to know your neighbors, as our speakers have emphasized throughout. So I wanted to, the next part of this meeting is actually going to be talking about what would happen in a Neighborhood Ready meeting and how you can get our help from that, how you can sign up. And I would like to turn this over to Lincoln. Yes.
Thank you, Karen. Hi, I'm Lincoln Thomas, and I'm the Neighborhood Ready Coordinator for Cedar Hills Ready. I worked with Cedar Hills Ready on last year's Quake Up event at the church on Parkway and Cedar Hills Boulevard, and I became a neighborhood host on my street of Faircrest Street last year. I'll just check in. I hope you can hear me. My connection's a little shoddy right now, so let me know if it's causing issues, but I'll keep going. I'll also remind you that we are here with if you have questions during this time, put them in the chats. We can possibly answer them at the end of our meeting in a Q&A. So you've been listening for a while, and my time as a school teacher has taught me that now I should try to engage you a little. So we're going to launch a poll. And the questions on the poll, let's see. Well, they're here on the slide.
Do you want me to
and
live?
hopefully you can access the poll as well. Question, is it locked?
It shouldn't be locked.
Oh, well. Well, if the poll's not working, we can also use the participant window. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a couple icons. One of them is participants. There's 54 participants right now. If you click on that, you can see see all the participants. And what I'd like you to do for these questions is, let's see. Well, Karen, are we doing a poll, you think, or are we trying something else?
No, go for it. You go for it.
Okay. Okay, so you can see the different icons in your participants window. So the first one at the bottom left is a green check mark. Hopefully, so that's a yes. So first question, if you can name 3 people on your block or more, go ahead and put a yes. Click that yes, so we can get a sense for how well you folks know your neighbors. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. Not bad. Okay. Let's see. So we don't have a whole lot of experience using this. Let's try. The next question. How about we use the like button, which if you go to the bottom again and there's the more with 3 dots, there's a thumbs up. So if you can name 10 or more neighbors who live closest to you, go ahead and hit that like button so we can get a sense for that. or dislike, as the case may be, with the thumbs down. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. About 9 people who know 10 or more neighbors.
Wow.
Well, that's not bad, folks. Okay. I forgot to mention this. For the purpose of these questions, your pickleball or your bocce ball partner who lives 3 streets over, they don't count because I bet they're great friends and it's great games and you're taking advantage of pickleball and bocce ball at our new Cedar Hills Park. But yeah, the fact is they won't be able to help you because they won't be able to get to you fast enough in a disaster like an earthquake. It really has to be people who you can get to fast to be able to help them. All right, well, it's not bad, the numbers we have. So I know most of my immediate neighbors, but with somebody moving in and out every year on my block, I can't always think of everybody's names on the fly. Before I became a neighborhood host, I knew only a few neighbors because of the HOA permitting process that we have in Cedar Hills. So learning names is not something that comes naturally to me. But you won't be shocked to hear that hosting my neighbors has helped me to get to know them. Being a neighborhood host takes a little time, but I'm glad to be more connected to my community, and my neighbors appreciate that I'm helping them plan for the worst. As Karen said, neighborhood readiness involves learning and planning with your neighbors on what steps to take immediately after disaster. This is not only important to do for safety, but it can also be a lot of fun to get to know your neighbors. Wouldn't you like to have some other people you can share the good news of pickleball with? I know I would. So, when does this planning happen? At a neighborhood ready meeting. Your fastest way to get prepared is to become or find a neighborhood host for your block. You invite neighbors to participate. That is about 10 to 20 households on your block. We can provide speakers and the training in a 90-minute format. We can set up and host this online as a Zoom meeting, or you could host this outdoors. During this time, you and your neighbors will complete these tasks on the screen and will come away with a plan for recovering after a disaster. Part of your plan involves creating a map of your block. This includes info about who lives in each house, whether they have special needs, whether they have pets, also where the gas and water are located, because in a disaster, you may need to turn these off to prevent further damage. The G's and the W's are very small, but maybe you can see them so that you kind of note where the gas is. I'm pointing to them now on the screen as a gas, and some of these have watermarked also, but I'm having trouble seeing those. Oh, there's one. If you can't manage these utilities due to an injury sustained during the disaster, your neighbors can help. Of course, the map and contact info with your neighbors is confidential. Notice the street numbers and the street name. At your neighborhood ready meeting, a volunteer facilitator to become a resilient neighborhood. You will learn the 9 steps to take immediately following a disaster to secure and protect your family, home, and neighborhood. Is there a way to go back a slide? I clicked twice.
Oh, we did. There you go.
Thank you. So you'll learn the 9 steps to protect yourself, your neighbor, your family, and your neighborhood. This is a 9-step program sponsored by FEMA in their Map Your Neighborhood program. After taking care of yourself, your loved ones, and securing your home, you will meet with neighbors at a predetermined site. You'll divide into teams, check to make sure other neighbors are safe, and take the next necessary actions. So, what do you have to do to become a neighborhood host? Contact us so that we can get you started with more information and materials at info.cedarhillsready@gmail.com up there on the screen. And we can provide you materials and a template for the introduction meeting. We can help you pick a 10 to 20 household block for your neighbors and decide on a host, whether that's you or a neighbor. We will provide an experienced speaker to walk your group through the basic steps of neighborhood recovery and the tools that you will need. We can provide the Zoom platform if you want to do this electronically, or if the weather is nice, we can do the meeting outdoors with masks and social distance, perhaps in a park or in a neighbor's backyard. Lastly, you just got to schedule a meeting and have it. You can't schedule it without having it meeting. That wouldn't do any good. What next? Well, after your initial block meeting, please let us know how you felt it went and how we might provide further help. Keep in touch with neighbors and meet periodically, at least annually, to practice your disaster procedure. Ultimately, how prepared your neighborhood gets is up to you. I have my own vision for how this network of prepared neighborhoods is going to work, and it involves sharing skills and resources between neighbors. For example, maybe neighborhood A has a ham radio operator, a CERT member, and a master gardener, while neighborhood B has a plumber, a nurse, and a prepper with an alligator purse. I don't know if you're familiar with that nursery rhyme, but you gotta imagine that the contents of such a purse would be as extensive as Mary Poppins' carpet bag. You know, probably with a pickleball paddle, probably with some meals ready to eat, probably with some water. You know, she just pulled anything out of there. So that's what my imagination goes. Let me tell you, you haven't really lived until you told bad jokes to a muted audience on Zoom. If you get the chance, you really got to try it sometime.
Are you frozen?
No, I haven't frozen. I'm just trying to use comedic effect timing, but yeah.
Okay.
Again, really not a great idea. Anyway, the two neighborhoods that I described would really benefit from sharing their skills and knowledge, but it would take some communication, preparation, and mutual trust, which takes time. Yes, okay.
All right.
So what happens after your meeting is up to you, but the Cedar Hills Ready team will be ready to help however we can. Thanks so much for being here and for helping us to get Cedar Hills ready. As our mission says, we are committed to building resilient neighborhoods, and we believe that in building resiliency, we can also build caring and connected communities, hopefully the kinds of communities in which we and our neighbors want to live. You are invited to stay for the Q&A portion of this presentation. Karen and I will stay for a bit to answer questions, as well as some of our speakers. But if you'd like to leave, that's also fine. Thanks for being here.
All right. Well, I'm going to open it up. We are wrapping it up, but if you guys have questions, Stan, would you like to start with the questions that you've collected during the chat session? Are you muted?
Sure, I'm here. I'm ready, more or less. We actually got quite a few. I tried to reorder them so that they kind of tie together so that we can have one or two people to speak to each of them. This has to do with Beaverton Emergency Management and Washington County Emergency Management, and that is, will Beaverton Emergency Management support us in Washington County? Cedar Hills isn't within Beaverton city limits. And along those lines, what about Aloha? And then a third person, Garden Home is also in unincorporated Washington County. So it's up to the emergency managers to address that, please. Kate and Alita.
I think Anita might know more than I do. My understanding is initially when we set up this sections that we were going to larger areas around, but I'm not quite sure where the boundaries go to. I know we have, what, 8 different teams? Karen, you know about this.
Right.
That cover different areas.
So in terms of Beaverton CERT, they extend to all of the areas that are around where the Beaverton School District is. So it's a large area, and it includes Cedar Hills and unincorporated areas of Washington County. our area here in Cedar Hills is serviced by Washington County Sheriff and also the Washington County
Emergency.
emergency office. Alita, are you there? Did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, I am still here. I think being in an unincorporated location near a big city actually means you're going to get overlapping support, which I think is really great. You'll have Beaverton Emergency Management, who is focusing on the city limits, but they're so generous and they will reach out, and they're not checking people's IDs to make sure they're in the right city to get resources, or they're still going to pass out information to people who live in unincorporated Washington County. And then you have the County Emergency Management System and our EOC, which is set up to cover the unincorporated Washington County areas. And we also coordinate with each of the cities. We're all connected, we're all working together. Even though there are multiple different EOCs in different cities in the unincorporated areas, we're all working together for the entire community. And when I think a really good example of this was just in the wildfires, I was on a call with a lot of the city emergency managers talking about setting up a shelter. And this was later in the week from the initial fires in our county, which means we were really talking about a couple of those families who might not get to go back quickly, or the evacuees coming from Clackamas County. Several of the city emergency management programs said that they would be willing to provide support in terms of CERT volunteers, in terms of buildings, in terms of resources. And this was for people in an entirely different county. You know, so if you're in an unincorporated section right next to a city, just think how much more willing they're going to be to help you right next door.
We're definitely not going to be drawing boundary lines about who we don't do or don't help. But again, the amount of need versus the amount of support there's going to be a huge gap, and it's going to matter so much. I forgot to put my hand up for one is we are in this together, and two is it's up to us as individuals and neighbors to take care of ourselves first. You can't expect that a fire truck's going to be able to show up, or you're going to have an ambulance taking you. So being already connected with your neighbors and being prepared to have food and water, for now we're saying 2 weeks, minimum of 2 weeks is going to be important for everyone.
Yeah. Okay, Stan, what's the next question?
Okay, so we had a question about what can we expect from the professionals during an emergency, and I think our first responders have already covered that pretty well. But we had a couple follow-ups with the county. Is the county EOC virtual backup safe from disruptions in communication systems? So put it the other way, are the communication systems, do we have backups to keep them safe through these disruptions? So I don't know if this would be Alita or if this would be the Sheriff's Department.
I can kick it off and then see if Mark has anything to add. We have backup systems. They are not to the same capability of what we're used to, right? We've got tons of Ethernet cables around the EOC so we can plug in our laptops to the internet, and we'll have a generator for our building. We work with the Amateur Radios Emergency Services, or ARES group, who works with radio communications. We have radio satellites and satellite phones. We have a lot of different systems in place, and it's not exactly the same as what we work on a normal basis, but we won't be completely shut off from communications.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and some of the CERT members are part of that ARES organization. I don't know how to use my radio yet, but I have my license.
It takes time. So the following question was, how do emergency responders know which streets are safe to drive on? And I believe that would be like the fire department and the sheriff's department probably do windshield drives to figure that out, but I will leave it to them to answer that.
So I'll start off with a little bit of that. So in a case of a situation, it's going to be basically communicating via our radios to our other deputies that are on the road in the districts, basically in the field, where that's been most affected. So they're going to let us know, hey, this Blanton is blocked from so far to far, or Shoals Ferry is blocked, or Spring Hill is going to be blocked, or something like that. And then it just gives us a kind of an overall operating picture of what's working, what's not. And then we can also get information from the EOC, other partners like PG&E, where lines have been down, or people that literally call into 911 saying, hey, this road's blocked. So it's, like you said, it's going to be everything from people on the ground to the people that are calling in, people that are affected by the disasters that are all radioing people, amateur radio. So it's going to come from a variety of sources, and we just have to kind of take it all in as best as we can. So that's kind of how we're going to know.
Thank you.
Great.
So now getting into a little bit of some issues that occurred from several people. This came, I'm registered with the publicalerts.org, but had not received any fire smoke alerts. I know from my viewing of it, it was indicating that it was down. So I don't know if who's would be able to speak to that.
That would be Monique, I think. Yes, Monique.
So the public alerts for like smoke and air condition probably would not come from us. They would probably come from the city or county emergency management. When I talk about being ready for public alerts, the 911 center utilizes it at the request of the fire departments and the police departments. And it's more for immediate emergency notification needs. Like I said, the evacuate, the shelter in place, those types of things. On certain situations, it might be when we're looking for someone who's missing, endangered, elderly, something like that. But usually it's when we have to get an immediate need, and it's just for a small specific area. So we don't typically send them to an entire city or an entire county. Those would come from those other emergency alerts that you see. That we did do those when things hit level 3, so that's a different type of notification. The public alerts are typically smaller, and if it impacts you, but we weren't really aware of the air quality, so that was just kind of something where the county would send out information on it, and I think you can get on the county's website and look at those notifications. But as far as why they didn't send any out, I'm sure they also have their own protocol for those types of notifications, and unfortunately I don't know what those are.
And I can chime in from the county perspective. In terms of putting out a public alert, we were focused more on an overall public information strategy rather than singular alerts that went out, because this was such a widespread long-term event. We were using Facebook, Twitter, Nextdoor. We put it on our county webpage, and public alerts is associated with a website itself that stood up a wildfire and air quality page. So while it wasn't pushed out to your phone, we were using some other avenues to get that information out. We also relied on the National Weather Service and weather.com and any weather apps you have to alert you to this air quality as well, the nightly news. So there are so many channels, it didn't seem appropriate to use the public alert system because we don't want people to become numb to those alerts.
Okay. And then another question that was similar and along that line is, what is the text alert number for Washington County? Is that something that is viable or available?
The text, to be able to text into 911, is that?
No, it's, what is the text alert number for Washington County? I'm not sure exactly. Maybe I can get some clarification on that in a little bit, and we can come back to that. Another question is, do you have any idea about how cell phone services may be impacted?
I'll pipe up. I think during an incident like this, I think it's I think it's going to be pretty impacted. I think you need to be prepared to the fact that it's going to take a while to get through the lines. I mean, we have certain things for us as first responders to be able to take priority over the lines. We have specific credit card kind of things for major disasters so that we have a priority so we can talk to each other if we need to. But I think it's a very real thing. I think you need to expect the fact that the infrastructure is going to go down and that you're going to need to be able to be self-sufficient for a while until they can get those lines up, especially if you're looking at cell phone towers and we're talking about maybe earthquakes or something that's going to take them down or lose power for the cell towers that are running on generators. So just be aware of that is most likely going to happen.
And I had heard, I don't know if this is still valid, someone please correct me, who knows. But I had learned initially that you want to have an out-of-state phone text a family member out of state and have all family members text that way, because text has a better chance of getting through and it can go directly to satellites versus having to go through cell towers that might be down. Or I don't know if it goes directly to satellites and has to go through a cell tower first before it goes up, or I'm not sure exactly.
It does its thing.
It does its thing. So it's
Yeah.
good to everybody text somebody out of state so that you know about each other.
Okay. So, so now getting into more personal or needs of needs here, and this is a medical question. How to keep meds, insulin refrigerated, how to alert rescue workers regarding critical meds. So.
Sure, I can kind of help out with that question.
Thank you.
One, and I think I might be able to answer two questions. Another one that came in on the chat with this one answer, but Red Cross will be deployed, and part of what they do is not only provide a shelter for people to go to that have been displaced, and this happens from a single house fire to a major disaster, as you've seen all across the region, whether it's been hurricanes or whatnot. And part of that is also them providing essential needs, including medications. And so, we'll have a single house fire where the house will be, completely destroyed. And maybe we've got a diabetic patient. Obviously, we can treat them on scene, but for the long term, if they need medications or if it's someone that's not injured or whatnot, that's where they really come in handy. And that's why we've really been pushing even with these wildfires. I mean, Red Cross is some of our unsung heroes that really come to the rescue with a lot of those needs. And so that's a matter of, obviously they will identify a place that's going to be safe and structurally sound for people to go to. And, and whether or not, in Washington County Emergency Management has done a fantastic job. I know Alita touched on this too, of identifying structures that will hopefully be standing because they'll be seismically built in a way that they'll be standing or whatnot. And so then at that point, we have to do they do the evaluation to figure out where they can also go to. So it's not like we've got a straight answer of, go to this specific location if we have an earthquake here or, another wildfire. We don't know until it really happens. But that's where we'll push out that information. And again, just kind of piggybacking off of Alita, we push a lot of information that we can out on the websites and social media. And if you don't have a social media account, part of the purpose of putting it out in these directions is the media does. So that's where it's getting on the news. A lot of you saw everything with the wildfires on the news. That was information pushed out on the media because they didn't even have the bandwidth to send news crews to our fire because it wasn't nearly as big as the Clackamas fires, but that's how we would get information out as well. So hopefully that helps answer both questions.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so following up on that, the very next question was what would stop fires from reaching our area? And I think you sort of touched on that as well. So maybe you could add a little bit more to that. Most likely, we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that, obviously we're going to be relying on the 911 reports. And then there's also going to be not necessarily your frontline responders of fire and police out on the lines, but, land use and transportation employees, they're going to be out and about on all the roads too. They're going to be helping figure out what roads are blocked. They're going to have eyes out there. PGE, Northwest Natural, they're all going to be activated and on the road. They're not going to sit around in an office or at their home waiting to get deployed. And so they're going to be able to help and get back to dispatch and let them know and whatnot. And that's where we'll try and keep up on all of those different emergencies. But again, that subtle reminder of, we are going to be maxed out. All your responders are going to be completely maxed out, but we're going to do the best that we can. So whatever you can to be prepared personally, we fully support that.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd like to say one more thing about medications. If you take medications, you should, if you can, possibly have at least a month's supply on hand so that you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I've had several people that they gradually increased the amount of their reserves over time so that they could have that, because it can be difficult. Another question was, and then now we're getting down into the nitty-gritties of this whole program, Neighborhood Ready. And one question is, I'm a very new beginner to disaster preparedness. I have a pre-made earthquake bag with food, but that I have a lot to learn and prepare for. And the following comment was, what is the first thing a family should do to prepare for an earthquake? Welcome to Neighborhood Ready.
Absolutely.
So you're in the program. You're getting indoctrinated. The next step is the next steps.
Yeah.
So, and then an interesting question. Any plans in Washington County to have something like Portland's Beacon program? And if not, why not? And I think, and this kind of falls in with the cities have a plan, and the county has a plan, and the state has a plan, and then FEMA has a plan.
So, Stan, can you define what Beacon is? Because a lot of people probably don't know what that is.
I don't know the
I just Googled it. It stands for Basic Earthquake Emergency Communication Node. So it's a place in Portland to go after a major earthquake to ask for emergency assistance if phone service is down, or to report a severe injury or damage.
Thank you, Alita. I have seen this thing bandied about, and it's called different things in different places. So they're emergency hubs, or they're beacons, or this and that, and so forth and so on. So they, I have heard from some that there are locations in and around the cities and the county that have some reserve supplies.
Is it supplies, or is it like a communications? Alita, you were reading it.
Let me continue.
Yeah, it does have that. I've talked with enough of the net people and that's what each area's net has a beacon, and they have, unfortunately, they have to maintain it, manage it, and get funds for it.
Yeah,
and I think that's one of the big barriers to not being able to do beacons here in Washington County, is that we need funds, we need people dedicated to do it, we need the resources. So I think we're really relying on the Neighborhood Ready, the Quake Ups. That's where we're putting our time and effort into putting that grassroots organization down in as many communities as we can, instead of having these multiple different programs, different capabilities and different goals, can get a little confusing. I also think another part of the Beacon program is that they do already have pre-identified locations for someone to go, and that's a little tricky after an emergency because we don't know what's going to be safe. And I think it's even harder for us to say, yes, go to this church in Beaverton, and then that church is in ruins and nobody from the county is there, nobody from the sheriff's office is there, and so now we're sending people into an unsafe location and we broke our trust. So there's a couple of different things that we have to coordinate and think about when creating these programs to get information out in an emergency.
Yeah, I think to add with Alita, I think some of that terminology that I think of, it was talked about prior to me, and I think prior to Alita, from Doug Horman. It's from an earlier era, kind of like the fallout shelters. It's like if you get the civil patrol, and they're going. If you have something going on, you go to this location. And I think Alita really hit it on the head. We really don't have an idea on what kind of disaster is going to happen. If we did, we could prepare for it better. And I think one of the main goals of the EOC for the county and the city's operating centers and the CERT units is when you start getting prepared and you're working an incident, one of the goals is, hey, let's start figuring out rally points for people, for organizations, for food, for supplies. Best example would be the fires. We had a rally point for the people that we displaced out of the Chehalem and the Hag Lake fires. We went to Mountainside High for some of the people to go there. So I think as we move forward with all this type of preparedness, we really don't have a way, in my opinion, to have a beacon specific for every single incident. We can't just prepare for just one incident. I think it has to be kind of on the fly. We have to have kind of procedures or reflex tasks that we set in goals for each specific disaster that happens that'll help us set those rally points to be more specific, to be able to help whatever the effort is at whatever kind of disaster it is.
So it's being flexible in
Absolutely.
what the actual scenario is so that we're responding in the best way that is helping. And again, I think this comes back around to why individuals need to be prepared, why their neighbors need to be prepared together, is because they act as a unit to help each other. And when they're out of danger, they could actually help adjoining neighborhoods and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that's how we best perform, is by first doing what we need to do. And that's why this program is so important, is to get people in this mode, just in taking care of and recognizing that they are the first responders. And then eventually the real first responders will arrive.
So do we have any other questions? Are we good? It is 22 after the hour. So are there any other questions, or shall we adjourn at this point?
It's still, I'm just getting a little bit more on the beacon idea, which we can talk about offline and at another point in time. This is our first meeting. There's going to be more meetings. We're going to do things that are actually going to be trying to help everyone in this program. And just stay tuned, and please forward your questions to info@cedarhillsready.org.
Wait, no, it's info.cedarhillsready@gmail.com.
Oh, okay, that one. Yes, sorry. And then just stay tuned. We will be providing more and more information as far as this. And then the booklet is ready. There's more information on the website as well, et cetera, et cetera. And
yeah, sign up. Let's get your neighborhood prepared. Let's create a movement.
How are you checking with folks to see if they're interested in doing a meeting?
They're going to contact us, and then we'll set one up with their neighbors. Absolutely. Okay.
So
we'll have other informational meetings in the future too, but this is what our real focus is making sure that people get neighborhood ready right now.
Yeah. And that's one thing I would say in looking at COVID. One thing that's been helpful is that, we're all stressed out and there's all this stuff going on. When you can actually help a neighbor with something, at least you have a sense of, feeling good for a change instead of just dealing with the disaster. So being to help one another is a great offset, not only physically, but emotionally for both the receiver and the giver.
Yep. Connected, caring, and resilient neighborhoods. That's what we're about. All right.
Many thanks to our first responders that helped us with this today.
Yay. Thank you. Yes. And
we'll call you again, probably.
Yeah. And thank you all for coming. Hope to see you again. And yeah, please just get in contact with us. Talk to you later.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.